This is a video scope King Tony tool sent over to me immediately after I sent out an SOS because something catastrophic may just have happened to my engine. Here's how it went down. So I jumped in the car on my way to the office, put the key in, gave it a turn, and she fired up immediately, as she always does. But instead of that 2.5 litre goodness, you know, the one with the undertone of tight belts that we've all become used to, I was met with a tractor. And so I jumped out immediately to get a closer look at what was going on. So what I was seeing was a very loud vibrating motor, and as I twisted on the throttle cam, she chugged a few times and died. Reluctantly, I tried to start her up again, but I was greeted with nothing but loud moving metal. So the plan is to first check the condition of the timing belt, then of course check the timing. Mine is a later car, and so along with the pulleys, I need to then glance at my auto spring tensioner as well. After this, I'll check the water pump because I've heard stories about this causing issues if it seizes. And then we'll be looking down into each cylinder, and I'll be praying there is no damage seen in there. Thank you again, King Tony. Any one of these may be the culprit, or there may be something beyond this that we need to take a deep look at as we are exploring. So this video may be really short, or perhaps extend out beyond this basic list. At a minimum, we're going to be using the following: a King Tony bore scope or video scope, a 10mm socket for the bolts holding our belt covers on, a 24mm socket and small extension for the crank bolt, and a torch, or in other words, a headlamp. The other challenging bit is that where she's parked, her tail is on a fairly aggressive slope here in the driveway, and I dare not mess around with jacking her up. So anything done today will be done with very limited room. So I know what you guys are thinking. Why hasn't he taken the spark plugs out? It's a good question. And mostly it's because I want to get real feel for what's going on in this engine. So if there was no compression, of course we'd know what is going on. I mean, I'm looking at the belts here, the belts seem just fine. But listen to what we're hearing. What is that? That. Okay. That. That. It's loose. Let me get you in a little closer. That. What is that? Well, there is definitely something going on in this engine. You can hear it, I can feel it every time we get into one of those positions. Now, your experienced ear will be telling you something, and I'd really appreciate it if you would go down into the comments section and let me know what your thoughts are, any clues that I can follow. Because up to this point, my inexperience doesn't have enough clues to know exactly what is happening. Now, if it does turn out to be a real disaster, the side benefit of that is that there may be a couple of other videos that come out of this. I may have to drop the engine, and then a second one might be me doing a teardown. And so if you'd like to follow along, please go ahead and subscribe. Once you've done that, let's jump back into figuring out what's going on with this engine. Next up, I'm going to check the timing, the water pump, and then let's get down into those cylinders. So I did mark it when I did my timing belt when I first bought the car. There we go. That was really quick and so simple. I'm so chuffed with how easy some jobs have become. That was super simple. I mean, I had to tape the camera down, but I mean, even this, look how simple this is going to be. Usually we're leaning over, trying to squint and find our way through here. And in a matter of seconds, there we go, literally seconds. The timing is good. This mark is lining up, that mark is lining up. And so I'm really pleased with what I'm seeing here, except of course this then makes me wonder what in the world is going on. All right, now it's time to check that auto tensioner quickly. Come on. Okay, there it is. Okay, I'm pleased with what I'm seeing here. Sometimes this nut on the end of this spring-loaded area here fails. That's what I've read. And so if that happens, then the automatic tensioner fails. But fortunately, in my case, it's there. Again, great use of this tool. Carboned, a little bit of oil there. Well, many of you are much more experienced than I am, but to the other novices out there, I read that we should put a kink in the camera, which is fairly logical, because once we're down there, we need to be looking around and we don't want to be pointed straight down at the piston. Once we're in there, what are we looking for? We're looking for impact on the piston from the valves, but we do have compression, so perhaps that won't be something that we even have to be concerned about. And then the second thing is we're looking for vertical lines down the cylinder walls. So without further ado, number one, let's get in there. Okay, here's the top of the piston. I can see lots of carbon and dirt, but what I do not see is impact of any kind. No gouges, so that's really good. Okay, now let's look at the cylinder walls. There's a little bit of vertical stuff going on here. Are we looking at just oil or are we looking at bore score? This is an oily cylinder. Now those experienced among you, please weigh in. What are your thoughts? Look at how filthy it is in here. It could just be oil, so just rings maybe. Okay, let's move on to cylinder 4. Of course, in our engines, 1 and 4 and 2 and 3 rotate at the same time, so 4 is where we go next. It's the top of the piston with lots of build-up. Cylinder 4 had a pretty clean spark plug, so no oil. And if we're looking at the cylinder walls, we're immediately seeing that. And I don't see much else, or perhaps don't want to. There's definitely some vertical action here as well, though. And I don't know what those little black specks are either. But at least the top of the piston looks good. Well, good is a relative term. Okay, let's rotate the engine and get 2 and 3 in the right positions. Number 2, a little bit of, no, almost nothing here. And certainly not wet like the other one. Pretty good. Cylinders 1 and 3 were the oily ones, and I think we're seeing it reflected here, much cleaner. Except some more vertical lines seen here, but how bad are they really? Now sometimes the light can be useful as it refracts in a particular kind of way when it hits things. Okay, there, look at that. See that? That's a gouge, definitely. Top left. Look at the way the light shines into it. I would say that is definitely a tiny little bit of gouging. Nothing major, but certainly not the nicest thing to see. Or at least I don't think it's major. Let's go for 3. Okay, number 3 also quite clean on the head, but look at that. Alright, another piston not showing signs of any impact. This is great news. And initially feeling the compression by not taking out the spark plugs helps confirm this. Cylinder 3 is dirty, but every cylinder has had these vertical lines. If it were just in these oil heavy cylinders, we might have been able to point to rings, but that seems wishful thinking at this point. But the question is, does scoring of the bores tell us what is going on in this engine? And what is that sound? I hope by this time 1, 2, 3, or maybe more of you have said to me in the comment section, Gareth, don't worry, relax, you're overreacting. That sound is completely normal. and that I don't have anything to worry about. Thank you if you've done that, but I must also admit that I'm at a little bit of a loss, and I hope that you've shared some additional insights for me and the rest of the community to access, because these tests aren't yielding all that much. I'm not prepared to try and start her again until, of course, I have some additional clarity. So the final thing I'm going to do today, let's get some oil out of the sump and see if we can see any glitter. Okay, so I only really need a small amount. I'm either going to make a massive mess here. Oh, no success. So what I'm going to need here is I'm going to need control. It's going to come down to the use of fingers and pressure, just to control the flow, control the plug. That's the theory. There we go. I'm pretty sure that's more than enough. $50 Newton meters. Perfect. It's not a lot, but let's be careful. All right, with that we have our oil sample, and from initial inspection it doesn't look like it's got very much going on here at all, in fact. But let's get a magnet on this and that'll give us a little bit more insight. Let's clean this off, but it is magnetic. See, it's not as straightforward as just wiping something down. You can't really do that either. It doesn't really work. Okay, the majority of stuff is gone. Let's get in here. Does it sound gritty to you? Okay, so what we had here is we had very, very fine particles. But on here, there are some much larger particles. I mean, visible to the eye that it is significantly larger. I'll get you in closer in just a second and you'll see the difference. It's interesting how initially, when you just look at it, you think, oh, not too bad. But actually, in reality, here, there is stuff floating in there. So definitely some larger particles in there, which to me point to a need to visually inspect the bearings. Other than that, some important findings were made, but on the whole, everything other than this oil inspection feels largely inconclusive as it relates to what I initially experienced. That said, I'm really looking forward to hearing all of your insights, thoughts, and comments, especially any additional tests or checks I should be doing. In terms of next steps and videos, if we are to inspect the bearings in other cars, dropping the sump to check on them and the condition of the lower end is a quick and easy job when in situ, but in ours, not so much. Then there is that possible scoring problem, which also requires a closer look, which means taking the head off. It seems to me that both are needed, but certainly not today, not in this video. Thanks again for everyone's input. We have such a great community, and I look forward to seeing you in the next video.